Good afternoon. Welcome to the Voice of Wisdom. With over 15 years of experience as an investment banker, entrepreneur, investment analyst, economist, and venture capitalist, Morty Davis is Wall Street and capitalism personified. The over 400 companies for which he has raised more than $3 billion over the years have created a countless number of jobs and exciting new products. Through the Voice of Wisdom, Mr. Davis explores, analyzes, and debates the most topical, political, economic, and social issues facing our world today. Joining Mr. Davis today for a discussion on the vice presidential debate is Len Carter. Len is an investment banker, business consultant, and private investor. And now, Mr. Davis and Mr. Carter.
Welcome back, my beloved cohorts. You are the guys that make, if it's worthwhile, you make it worthwhile, this podcast. You give me so much good input.
Good afternoon, and welcome to the Voice of Wisdom.
You're welcoming my listeners again. Yeah, welcome again. I love you, and you're welcome 2, 3, 4 times. Anyway, before we get into the current events, which, as I repeated in the past, consistently are always downers, depressing. The good news is never news. It doesn't make the front page of any newspaper. Maybe that's a too broad a statement. It may make some of the porno papers or way out newspapers, but I wouldn't call them newspapers. I'd call them slut papers or whatever. But the news is always, it seems to me, always depressing. Either the reports on wars going on in the world, on poverty, on starvation, on right now in Florida, we have daily reports of flooding and global warming. So there's hardly anything that we should be thrilled about in the news. So before I get into the news and depress us all, first of all, I want to thank Len Carter joining us today once again. He's a genius. He's like me, he's a graduate of one of the great universities. We both graduated Harvard Business School, both at the top of our class. We, unlike me, Len Carter became an electrical engineer. He got his degree at a great Ivy League school, Cornell University, and he then got a graduate degree in electrical engineering from Stanford University, one of the other great American schools. And again, he was at the top of his class. So it's great to have him back. I hope he can keep the program alive, because I've been up for 25 hours in a row writing part of my new book. I have to keep writing while it comes out. So without further ado, I want to say one thing, maybe two things. But the one thing I want to tell you is, before I start, I'd like to give you some idea how to deal with the misery in this world. Incidentally, economics is called the misery of science. The misery of science. I don't think that's the right adjective, but it does describe what they call the economic. Because if you remember your economics, I think even Economics 101 discussed Malthus. Malthus was an economist, brilliant man, economist, a mathematician, really somebody we had to pay attention to. And he pointed out that the world was in big trouble. Humanity was in big trouble. We living on the earth were in big trouble because at the time there were less than 1 billion people in the world, but the population was growing. And he said that the population was growing geometrically, in other words, 2, 4, 8, 16, while the agricultural products, the ability to grow more food to feed the growing population, was growing only at an arithmetic rate, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. So he foresaw lots of starvation, poverty, of the earth being inadequate and unable to support a bigger population. So based on those predictions, it was called the
dismal science.
That's the word, dismal science. So I want to tell you how to be happy. Don't listen to those negative predictions, because now, at that time, 92% of the people were working on the farms and couldn't produce enough for their local society, much less for the rest of the world. Today, less than 3% in the United States are working for, I think that's the right number, are working in agriculture. And the United States is producing more food by far than it needs for domestic consumption. So I have faith in the human capacity to do more. Unfortunately, some of the do more that they do is more wars, more killings by guns, more neglect of the environment. So the way to be happy, you make up your mind to be happy. Love yourself. Anytime you get depressed, give yourself a pep talk, just as you would do your best friend. Instead of saying to yourself, this too shall pass, that's not a great uplifter upper. Say to yourself, as you would say to a friend, you're going through hell. I know it, because I've been there. And friends of mine have been. And unfortunately, in life we all have to go through these periods that leave scars on us. Those that handle it better do well. Those that don't handle it well wind up in mental institutions, or worse, suicide cases. So what you do with your friend is, if he's going through hell, be your best friend to him. Stop off, visit with him, spend time talking to him, tell him, this too shall pass, but tell him about things we're going to do together in the future that gets him off the momentary headache. Remember, Cal, you and I are going skiing in Montana in December, and that should make him feel good. And then we're scheduled next year to go watch the Wimbledon, the tennis matches in Wimbledon. We're going to have such a good time, as we always do. So just remember all the good things we're going to do. And don't focus on what's going on now. It's hard not to, but do something that gets you past this moment. As I tell my friends, either turn on a movie that's great, that'll absorb your mind, or read a book, or go visit a best friend, or make sure you get a best friend in life. That's the best investment. Very hard to get a great best friend, but if you work on it, you can get it. And what I do, I'm lucky because I just go down to the freezer in my kitchen. I take out a quart of Haagen-Dazs chocolate ice cream, put on a bunch of whipped cream or whatever other junk I like to put on, maybe some peanuts or cashews or something. And my depression is instantly over. So learn what gets you past the depressing thoughts and thoughts that lead you to the past negative experience, disappointment, etc. So now I want to the program's almost finished, the podcast. So I want to get the benefit of Len Carter's insights, inputs. Oh, crucially, in terms of being happy, get yourself a copy of this book that's in front of you. Happiness Guaranteed, or Your Misery. And on the bottom, there's a footnote, How to Be Happy No Matter What. It's a book that I wrote with my author daughter, Rookie Runoff. And it really has made, at least that's the feedback I get, it has made many people a lot happier. So get yourself a copy of this book. And to induce you to be happier and to get this book, I have made this offer that it's impossible to refuse. If you don't like this book, I've had this offer out. If you don't feel it's worth many times what you pay for, not just like it, but it doesn't lift your spirits and make you fuller, more uplifting, genuinely inspiring, happy life, then send it back to me. Don't send the book back. You can keep the book and not pay for it. But I'll send you back double the price if you send me the purchase invoice that you paid. I'll send you back double what you paid. So far, nobody's ever taken me up on it. And tons of people, including top chief executive of Fortune 400 firms, psychiatrists, and all kind of advisors, marriage advisors, have written me or called me and thanked me. So I don't know how you can get a better deal than that. You keep the book, you get double your money back. You got a profit and you got a great book. So go out and do it. I give you one idea a week, but it has hundreds of ideas and lots of humor. It's worth many times what you're going to pay, but you keep it and pay nothing. So enough of me. Len, what's the critical issue that we're going to address?
So we'll talk a little today about one of the big political events of the last week, which was the vice presidential debate between the two vice presidential candidates, J.D. Vance and Tim Walz. Their first and only debate.
Was it only a weekend?
Yeah,
Feels like forever.
Yeah, it was last Tuesday. Yeah, so a lot's happened since then. A lot of armchair quarterbacking and analysis, discussion,
and a lot of prayer because it was Rosh Hashanah.
Yes. So we can continue that armchair quarterbacking and praying today. So let's just give your overall thoughts. Like, what do you think? People always ask, was there a winner? Did the candidates achieve what they or their campaigns wanted them to? Before we get into any sort of detail, what was your impression?
My impression was the same as what most of the commentators on both Fox, which is the conservative station, and MSNBC or CNN, is that Vance did well. He came on strong. It would be one of the main reasons that not much was expected of him. So he came on as human, as somewhat reasonable, and overwhelmingly, he got good marks. Kamala got good marks, as she always does. But she was already well accepted. Much was accepted of her already.
Right.
She was the leading, the president, and she's likely to be the president based on the poll.
I think with Vance,
but Vance lost it, according to these commentators, when he was asked, did Trump win the 2020 presidential race? And he said that Trump
wouldn't answer.
Wouldn't answer.
Didn't say yes, didn't say no. Just wouldn't answer.
Right.
We'll get to a little bit more on some of the specific points that the two of them went after.
Don't say more on.
Yeah.
But we don't want to.
That's right.
Describe.
That's right. Either candidates. Right. I think in terms of what J.D. Vance set out to do, he achieved it. He was coming from behind with a lot of the media attacks on his cat lady comments, on his other women comments, and so he needed to show he was human, softer and smoother, and he did that. He definitely did that. I think Walz, he's a different kind of guy. He's Coach Walz. He's not a Yale lawyer who's used to debating and nuancing arguments. So that certainly came out when the two of them were going at it. In terms of armchair quarterbacking, you think as a result of what you saw and what you believe the outcome will be, how other people interpret, do you think that there was any mistake made on either candidate's part in picking this running mate. Should Kamala Harris have picked someone else? People say she should have picked Josh Shapiro based on, the debate. They say Shapiro would have done much better. He's a much more seasoned debater and politician. And Trump's been criticized for picking J.D. Vance as a result of his dislikability factor. So do you think that after this debate, there's any more support to those, should have done something different armchair quarterback people that are saying the, mistake?
Well, as long as it's politicians who are running for office, they're really going to win first prize for winning approaches to the world, to winning programs. They're not trusted for their promises. Trump and Vance as well doesn't give out any policies. They ask him, what are you going to do about health care, which he wants to eliminate. Health care for everybody.
They have a framework.
Or Obama's. So he says, I have lots of concepts.
Framework.
Great concepts.
Yes.
So he doesn't tell you what, but he gives a feeling that there's a lot behind it. And that's a good way he covers up. So I'm always amazed at how terrific Trump has been in dealing with every negative. His relationship with women, his relationship with people who work for him, who are all gone. Even his relationship with his wife, who just wrote a book contrary to his views on
women's reproductive rights.
On I don't know what's the word, on
abortion. Yeah,
abortion. So I think as long as it's people with that kind of personality that seem to be just searching for recognition and very, how do they describe Trump often? He's so self-interested. He doesn't care about anybody, about the nation, about the country. All he cares about is Donald Trump. So as I told you last week, they asked this woman, older woman, who are you voting for? And she said, I'm not voting. The guy says, what do you mean not voting? There's really only two choices. There's a couple minor candidates that don't amount to a hill of beans. But who of the two major candidates? And she said, I'm not voting. And they gave her a follow-on question. How come you're not voting? And she said, because it only encourages. She don't want to be the source of their run. So the one who seems to retain his appeal amazingly is Obama. Even though a lot of conservatives dislike him greatly. And Trump still thinks he's not a citizen.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He just made it by the skin of his teeth. Because 15 years older, earlier, if he were born in Hawaii, he wouldn't have been an American because it only became Hawaii only became one of the states of the United States 15 years before.
Although I'm not sure what happens if you're born in a territory. You may be an American citizen, like if you're born in the U.S. Virgin Islands. That's not.
I think if you're born in Puerto Rico.
Yes, Puerto Ricans are citizens of the United States. It's a territory. So Hawaii, before it became a state, was a territory, I believe. So might still have been a citizen.
No.
So what would you have been a citizen of?
Hawaii.
Hawaii wasn't a country. It's a territory of the
Hawaii.
United States.
I was a citizen of Brooklyn.
So I think in terms of second guessing VP picks, I think, it is, I believe that it doesn't really matter that much. At the end of the day, people do vote for the top of the ticket, but so I'm not so sure it really would matter. It does. Let's talk about the issue you said before, because sometimes things can come out in a debate that help the top of the ticket. For example, not much, going on the first hour and 25 minutes, but in the last 5 minutes when Tim Walz asked J.D. Vance if he would acknowledge that Donald Trump lost the 2020 election, and J.D. Vance just refused to answer. Tried to dodge the question, talked about the issue is whether or not Americans were deceived during COVID about certain things, just answering trying to redirect the question. And, Walz was pretty good response saying that's a pretty non-answer. And in giving a non-answer, gave a pretty interesting answer because he did not acknowledge, and he knows who's watching this debate down in Mar-a-Lago, and if he said yes, Donald Trump lost the election, he might no longer be on the presidential VP ticket. So his response was what it had to be. I'm sure it frustrates him as a intelligent attorney from Yale, to have to sort of play this game, as does. There's a similar comment interview with the Speaker of the House, was interviewed by George Stephanopoulos today or a few days ago. Asked him the same question. Would you agree? How would you answer that question, Speaker Johnson? And he said the same thing. He said, that's not an issue. It's a political gotcha. There's no reason to discuss it, and we should move forward. So he knows his audience. He knows what might happen if he actually says that Donald Trump lost the election. And, it's again, just another example you see every day in amazement of how
look at what happened
the stranglehold that Trump has over the Republican Party.
Look at what happened to the last vice president, who was the most loyal,
right?
Suck up, if you will, ass kisser.
Until he wasn't.
For 4 years.
Until he wasn't.
And now he's the most out of off the chart.
Right.
Even Barr is back on.
Right.
So you can't say that. If you're a Trump backer, has anybody come back from that? Maybe. I think a few people have come back, like Lindsey Graham,
although I don't know if he
was critical.
He was. I don't know if he actually ever said Trump lost.
No, not that. Nobody who said he lost
has ever lived to tell about it.
Others have said his he doesn't have the necessary talents, abilities,
unfit to be president.
and unfit to be president.
Even the vice presidential candidate said that. And he's been rehearsed many times now to answer that question, where he says, well, I changed my mind. I learned a lot and I changed my mind. I mean, you do have to have, look, politics is frequently, politicians frequently get caught saying things that contradict what they previously said, or being caught in some untruth. Sometimes they just continue the untruth. That's Trump's approach. Other times people find it hard to do that, like in the case where Tim Walz said he was in Tiananmen Square in the late
China.
80s or 90s in China when they had the riot, and it turns out he was not. And definitively proved to be not. So his approach to responding to that question about his truthfulness was, well, sometimes I misspeak and I'm a knucklehead.
It's hard to disagree with that. If they all describe themselves as knuckleheads, I think that if you get few arguments. But
whereas Trump would
would
never, he would say, I was in Tiananmen Square and your records are wrong. Right?
Trump made it.
So just like when the jobs reports came out, when they were bad, he'd say it's a fake job report. When they were good, he would say it's a good job. It's real. So it's selectively.
Who said that?
Trump.
If it was a good report,
he would say it's his doing and correct. And if it was a bad jobs report,
and he gave Biden credit.
No, during his administration. And if it wasn't, then it was a fake report that the Labor Department put out to make him look bad.
Trump made it not unreasonable to lie, because nobody could tell lies, bigger lies that are absolute lies, because he said the exact opposite formally, and it doesn't bother them. So
even
that's good.
I mean, and it's miraculous, as we've discussed many times. Most other candidates get crucified, and Trump seems to get away with it, even just recently saying that FEMA is out of money and hasn't been, has the Biden administration used all the money and gave it away to migrants. And that's why there's no money left to give to victims or to help rescue efforts or rebuilding efforts for North Carolina victims of Hurricane Helene. And the head of the government agencies have come out and said that's just not true. That's just not true. I mean, and yet that sort of fact checking gets unchecked. But whether or not Tim Walz was in Tiananmen Square in 1990 is a big deal. So
this isn't the first time. I think Hillary said she got off the plane in one of the wars, and she was shot at, and they said she wasn't even there.
Yeah.
And Bush Jr. said where he got that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction and went to a major American war that cost tons of lives and tons of treasure, blood and treasure. So, and I think he was also on a destroyer or a battleship.
Yeah.
And he said, we won the war.
Yeah. I mean, dealing with misstatements, how it's interesting to see how different politicians do deal with misstatements, because they all make them, and trying to cover it up or trying to justify it versus trying to say I changed my mind, or no, I misspoke. so let's talk about another very big topic today, these days, and was discussed somewhat in the debate as we passed the 1-year anniversary of October 7th. There was a discussion on the debate of how to deal with Iran, specifically a nuclear Iran. Now, with the possibility that the country is much closer to having, a real nuclear weapon than, a few years ago when there was the treaty and so I guess the question, which wasn't really addressed too well in the debate. These types of questions aren't typically addressed too well because candidates want to play both sides of the issue. All candidates, they'll say we believe Israel should have the right to defend itself, and then they'll also say, well, we think there should, we should work toward a ceasefire. So to try to appease all opinions and views. But specifically with a nuclear Iran, how do you deal with that? What do you think the right approach to dealing with a nuclear Iran, particularly given where they are in their ability to have a nuclear device and the recent attack, with 200 missiles for the second time this year into Israel?
I'm amazed, that the United States is not more supportive of either Israel or the United States itself getting rid of that atom bomb that Iran is working on. They say they can't deliver it yet. They haven't perfected yet. But Iran articulates exactly how they feel, and we should believe them. They say, the Khomeini says, Israel's the little Satan, and the United States is the big Satan. And you'd think if Israel could really go in and destroy it, Saudi Arabia would be happy. All the Sunni countries would be happy as opposed to the Shiite countries. And I think it would be a big win for the world if Iran, and I have to admit, I have a bias towards Israel, but I think that's true for the world, that we don't need another crazy, mentally challenged person like the Khomeini having such a dangerous weapon. Incidentally, the weapon that the United States used against the Japanese Hiroshima and Nagasaki was maybe, or is 1/100th or to put it another way, at least 100 times more powerful new atomic bombs, 100 times more powerful than the ones we dropped on civilians in other countries. So you think, the world's in trouble. They could blow up the world. I like what Trump said today. Trump said the Western world of the United States or NATO tried to impeach him, tried to prosecute him criminally, and tried, let's do it, to kill him, to murder. That's brilliant,
Yeah, they said that at the convention when they tried to prosecute him, they tried to criminalize him, and then they tried to kill him, implying that it was all the Democrats doing that. So, we've had the discussion of incendiary rhetoric. I think that's a good example when the Republicans or Trump talks about they prosecuting him, they trying to kill him. It's all lumped together into his, specific political adversaries, meaning, his Democratic opponents.
No, it sounds right. They did try to impeach him and failed. Well, they impeached him, but they never got rid of him.
But they was the United States Congress. They wasn't the Democrats. They, the they that convicted him in a criminal trial in New York City was a jury selected by both the prosecution and the defense. The they that tried to kill him was some, lunatic person.
So when it comes out that way,
but
and that sequence, it sounds like, they tried in every way to get rid of him, and they can't.
Yep.
And look how hard they tried.
Yep.
They couldn't do it through legitimate impeachment, through prosecution,
or even through a gun.
Yeah.
Yep. So let's talk about some more issues here. The topic of immigration obviously came up, and Vance needing to support his boss's platform, was supporting the deportation of 11 or somewhere between 11 and 20 million illegal immigrants, depending on whose numbers you look at. I think the official numbers are more like 11, but the Trump numbers are more like 20.
300.
Whatever the actual number is, it's a lot. I think it's like more people than are in the prisons in the United States. So how do you deport, over 10 million people? Now, the answer that I've heard from the Republicans to that question is one person at a time.
That's true.
But, practically speaking, how do you do that? I mean, it's nice to have, clever political rhetoric, but how do you do it? I mean, realistically, how do you find, arrest and physically deport that many people? That's a lot of people. How do you do it?
You give them free transportation.
Yeah, if
they go,
they don't want
to go No, they go of their own volition. You give them like tickets to what's the great place in Canada that you'd like to go to?
Montreblanc.
Wherever. To Hawaii, to some place in the world that everybody like to go, and then don't let them back in.
Well, that's assuming they voluntarily show up at the airport and get on the plane. More likely they will hide. And so how do you root them out? How do you root out that many people?
I don't think that will ever happen unless Trump gets in and still feels strongly that way.
Which he does, but how do you do it? I mean, I think what would happen is it just wouldn't happen, right? It's like,
how did they move?
Yeah, but how do you find?
Did they move 1 million of them to New York? The hotels in New York
voluntarily. They came across the border and were thrilled to get on a bus to New York because that's where they would have housing and food and a place to hopefully work. You know, you announce you're going back, you're being deported from the country. I don't think you're going to get people running online.
It ain't ever going to happen. These 11 people are very important. We need more people. We're losing population, so we need them. We can't even fill all the jobs that are out there waiting. It's ridiculous, you know. So it's a great. Trump came up with a brilliant issue because before Trump raised it, it was not a significant issue. As a matter of fact, Reagan endorsed, what did they call these people that are here 11 years or longer, paid their taxes, committed no crimes. You know, we need them. We wouldn't get the crops picked. We wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, you can't. On the other hand, you can't create an incentive. It's a difficult position because you want to have a practical solution to people that are already here. On the other hand, you don't want to create an incentive for people to come illegally by treating them well, because that says if you come over illegally, we have a path for you to stay legally. I guess what you have to do is just draw the line and say from tomorrow forward, illegal immigration is a crime, and if you come over illegally, you will be deported and sent back or put in prison or whatever the solution is. And then we have to deal with the people that are already here. I mean, it's the only practical solution. You can talk about, deporting 11 million people one at a time. I mean, that's a nice campaign slogan, but it's not going to work. That's the problem.
Well, the truth is, I don't think we ever spent enough analysis and time to come up with a more perfect, you'll never get a perfect, but a more perfect immigrant or visitors even or something. Because there's no way that we shouldn't make anybody that comes here for a PhD and they come here and get important PhDs, and then the minute their student visa runs out, we make them leave the country. We should have an automatic, accelerated approach for these people to become, because those are the people you want to make, citizens that will help the country be a leader in technology and so forth. So we haven't thought that out. We still kick them right away. And for farm products, to bring in enough that farmers would be happy.
So another issue that is one of our favorite points of discussion that was bantered about a little last week was school violence. J.D. Vance.
What percentage of Americans are in favor of school
violence?
The NRA is.
Yes. So J.D. Vance said this was justifying or trying to explain why in the U.S. we have such a problem, and he made a comparison to Finland, where he said that the U.S. has a higher depression, anxiety, and mental health substance abuse rate than Finland, and implying that as a result, that's why there's more gun violence, even though there's a high ownership rate in Finland. He says that we have more mental health, substance abuse.
There's a high ownership.
Yeah, higher than
not high, and not even approaching the rate of it.
But it's not. It's
a little small fraction.
But it's not banned. And he says that we have this issue of depression, anxiety, and mental health. Walt said sometimes it's just the guns.
I agree with Walt. Because that's what Vance is advocating is the brilliance of the NRA. Because they want to distract from people not getting guns. So they said, it's not the guns. They always said, remember, it's not the guns kill those people. Which is so nonsensical. If they just had their nails or even knives. When there's a big slaughter in Japan or something, a guy with a knife maybe killed 7 people. And you could beat up a guy with a knife. I think that just helps evade dealing with the Second Amendment. Somebody pointed out last week that we should amend the Constitution dramatically because it was.
But here's what they said about Finland. Finland has 45.3 guns for every 100 people. Gun ownership in Finland is among the highest in the world, although crime rates remain among the world's lowest. So that's the argument to say it's a mental health issue.
They don't sell them bullets.
Yeah. But I think what's missing is there's a difference between a rifle and an AR-15 semi-automatic assault weapon. Right? The other thing that Vance was talking about was fortifying schools more to address the problem. Walt said, no, I don't want, schools to be fortified. I mean, it's solving the problem after the problem, right? I mean,
it doesn't solve the problem.
If you're
going to give teachers
if you had one way in and out of a school with metal detectors and armed guards, then if the school was truly fortified, like a fort, but then it would work. But that's what
you don't want to turn.
Of course, that's what he said. That's what Governor Walz said. I don't want schools to become that, and that's.
But they had that in Florida. They even had guards at the door, and they got in and they killed a lot of kids. That doesn't work. Giving teachers guns might work, but many more people would get killed than ever got killed.
Oh, for sure. I mean, they unless a teacher has it holstered, right? I mean, an armed shooter runs into the classroom and starts shooting. You can't say, "Hold on a second, let me open my drawer here, pull out my gun, and then fire back." Right? It's unless they're holstered at all times,
Even if they
almost
pull
in
it
a
out
ready
of-
position.
Even if they pull it out in time, they're not trained to do. Policemen miss.
Right.
All you're doing is raising the ante. A lot more people would get killed. They don't understand that. No, we have to straighten out a lot of things, especially in guns. But the guy said, in the United States, I think we've had, this might be a low number, 17, but it might be 117. I don't think we had 117
What?
amendments since it was originally written.
I don't think that many.
But there was a country, Norway, has had 1,710 amendments. And we wrote things that go back to the Civil War times. And so before slavery.
Well, we have 27 amendments. 27.
What?
We have 27 amendments. I think the last one might have one like voting, changing the voting
Yeah,
age.
two
But I mean,
were
in our
related to giving up slavery.
13. But the thing with amending the U.S. Constitution is, and this is how the Constitution was written, it's a very difficult process because it requires
That's what the guy with this politician.
3/4 of the states
There was no
approval by
reason
the Senate,
to
House,
make it
and
that
Senate.
difficult.
Yeah. Oh, it's almost these days, especially it's almost impossible, to get.
Especially things like the electoral college.
Yeah.
One guy was even saying there's no reason for a state with less than 1 million people to have 2 senators, and one like California with over 40 million people to have 2 senators.
Well, I mean that's how the Constitution was put together to give states rights.
That's not a democracy.
But it's a way to protect minority rights by giving states equal vote in certain things, as opposed to just. I mean that was the logic that they used when
but
they
I
wrote
don't
the
think you should give
Constitution.
minorities more power than the majority.
They don't have more power. That's
They
why.
do?
No, they don't, because that's why we have a House of Representatives where it's based on population, and so.
But the Senate could override.
Right.
Any
That's why it's a balance of power.
It's not balanced. Because the
They
Senate
can't
is more
override.
strong.
No, they
One
can't.
guy in the Senate.
Right. They can block.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But that's not. But so
They
can
could
the House. The House can block too.
No, but I'm saying one junior senator from one of the small states could stop things from happening.
If there's a 50-50 split, depends on how many senators there are voting for it.
No, even if there's not.
You don't need 99 senators. If you had 99 senators voting for something,
when they speak forever.
Filibuster.
Yeah,
that's 2/3.
No, but a guy could filibuster. One guy.
No, you need two. No, sir, you need 2/3 to block the filibuster.
Yeah, no.
Right. So if you had 2/3, I'm not saying it isn't, but if you had 2/3, one guy can't block it.
No, but one guy could block it if they can't get 2/3. That's an unfair equation.
No, one guy can't block it if they can get 2/3.
What do you mean?
You need 2/3.
Is it hard to get one up?
If they
Is
had
it hard to
2/3, if they had
You can't get
2/3,
2/3 of anything.
but it's not one guy can't block it.
No, he could start it.
Right, but you still need a third.
A third one?
You need 2/3 to stop a filibuster, or 1/3 to keep it going. So one person does not have.
Yeah, but it's still hard to get
I'm not
2/3.
saying it's not.
For
I'm just
anything.
saying it's not one person that makes the decision.
No, but
It's
one person
2/3.
could upset
Of course.
the whole values.
Right, but that doesn't mean that one person can decide the outcome.
So I don't think you seem to think that's a good law. It's ridiculous.
Well, we could have a whole discussion on whether there should or shouldn't be a filibuster.
No.
We're talking about whether the Senate should have two senators per vote.
2 senators
Per state, right?
for a small state.
I mean,
I'm not talking about
the
filibuster.
I understand, but when the framers wrote the Constitution, that was the idea behind it, was that you wouldn't have, each state would have equal states' rights. I mean, there is a logic to that one.
I forget what this guy. He was a very prominent politician. Was arguing that something introduced in 1861, a long time ago. It's so ridiculous, and it's still on the books. It was different times. Women didn't have a vote. Blacks didn't have a vote. You know, you can't just say it doesn't make a difference.
I didn't say that.
I'm not saying you always take it personally. I'm not saying you. Why do you take it so personally? Right away, he's defending.
I'm defending my position when attacked.
I'm not taking it as your position.
When you disagree with what I'm saying, I take that as a disagreement of my position.
The position of the country, keeping that, do you think that what he calls great, the electoral
college? I can understand why it was put in place, and I can understand why
it should be taken off.
Yes. So, I mean, to me, it's not clear one way or the other. It's not, I mean, you're very much against it. I'm not very much in favor of it, but I'm also not very much against it, because I can understand the arguments
in favor of democracy.
That was
the Republicans haven't won a majority of the vote, except for Bush Jr. second term. They haven't won a majority of the vote. Going back to probably Reagan.
Yeah. Reagan probably had I think that's true. Bush Senior might have had a majority.
Bush Senior?
Yeah.
Bush Senior never won.
Sure he did. He was president in 1988 to 1992.
I didn't realize he invited me. It occurred to me that he was thinking of putting me on as an appointee, because he invited me to a small gathering, 4 people. But then I didn't play golf.
So, all right, we're just about out of time, but we could ask one more question related to the debate as just a parting thought.
How much time do we have? 1 minute.
As a parting thought, given the performance and how each candidate did and how people perceive their performance and the effect that it may or may not have on the election, do you think that Trump should debate Harris a second time? She has already accepted a second debate invitation by CNN sometime later this month, and is taunting Trump to show up. He says, I already won so big, I don't need to debate her again.
Right.
I'm not going to. Of course, he's worried that he could have another bad performance,
Right.
and that may hurt him. So I don't know. Do you think they should? Do you think they will?
I think they won't, and I don't think it's going to make a big difference because it turns out that they evade most of the questions.
Right.
I don't think a lot of people. If it changed a lot of people, I would be in favor of more debate.
What they should require is like a fill in the blank questionnaire. Like what would you forcing them to articulate policy?
That's a good approach.
And then there's no way to weasel around the question. Here's what would you do? What's your plan for healthcare?
Yeah.
What's your plan for this? And then you can't you can't answer a question with a different question.
He would say, I have a lot of exciting
concepts. All right, but that's his answer.
I'm saying that you can evade the answers.
But if people want to accept that, then that's their prerogative.
They're accepting it. Right now, that's the way it works. You answer what you want, and you don't. That's the great thing about.
That's why they're not real debates. Real debates.
Right.
Like in a college setting, you have specific and I know because my son was on the debate team.
Really?
And I was a judge once in a while so I know how the forum works. Yeah. And if you don't answer questions,
you lose.
That's not a good thing, right? You will lose, right? And if you don't, respond to somebody's argument, then their argument stands. So there are sometimes the rules are somewhat arcane, but there are rules, and certainly there's rules on answering questions, not just talking about something else because you feel like it's what you want to talk about.
There's been a couple of debates that made a big difference, particularly the ones between Nixon and...
Right, but that was, again, that really wasn't on policy. That was on, image.
Yeah. Well, that's a big part of it. If a guy looks presidential...
Right. Or if they flub up, or if they can't, or if they, like Biden did, can't walk out on the stage without looking like he's going to fall over, that can hurt, irrespective of what your policies may be.
Nobody could have written a movie with what Trump did, and people would think it's real. Truth is much stranger than fiction.
Always.
I would never have believed it. The minute he did that, the first thing, I could reach under it. To me, that disqualifies him with 80% of the Christians.
I mean, you think about the brouhaha over saying I was in Tiananmen Square compared to, what other...
And who cares if he was there?
Right.
Who cares if he was there?
Right.
Wasn't
right.
There?
That's exactly right. Like the magnet, what's become issues seems to be, and Fox News and Sean Hannity makes every time he talks, he brings up how Kamala Harris wants to pay for transgender migrants to have sex change operations at the expense of taxpayers. I mean, first of all, the number of people who would probably fall into that category is probably 3 but it's that, and I don't know.
No, but the fact that he makes it
It's
an issue is worth criticizing him. Not that a lot of people are influenced. You think they should fund that? The government should fund that?
absolutely not.
Oh, see that?
But to make it an issue is to make it, to make it an issue when it's such a
No, but the guy shouldn't bring up an issue like that because it affects 12 people.
right. That's what I'm saying. It's sensationalism. That's
No,
why, because it gets people irritated,
Right.
because it's culture wars about that's typical
You're
progressive.
taking my money that
Right. Anyway,
Okay.
interesting
Thank you.
conversation
Thank
as
you.
always.
Thanks for your patience. You're great. See.
Well,
But anyway,
viewers know.
I love you all. I wish every one of you happiness, true happiness, quality happiness. I hope all your fondest dreams come true. Although I used to ask God for something, and I said, God, if you get me that, I'll never ask for anything else. I'll be so happy. And then God gave it to me, and it was like a curse. It was terrible. So I changed the way I beg God. I said, God, I love you to give me that. I'd be so grateful. But only do it if it's good for me, because I surely don't know what's best for me, So be careful what you wish for. You may get it. But just stay happy, love yourself, and I love you all. That's a good beginning. And stay upbeat. It's all attitude. Attitude. The attitude to have it. Gratitude. You're so lucky. Everything. If your eyes work, you're so lucky. Could you imagine if your eyes didn't work and you got up in the morning? You couldn't see colors. You couldn't see nature. And we take it for granted. Don't take anything for granted. Write down your blessing, so you can see what are the real blessings. Not a billion. If it said on one side $1 billion or $5 billion, but no eyesight and inability to make love or to walk. There's no question that the things of value are really unrelated to materiality. Anyway, every day of your life should be better than the day before. You deserve it, and we'll talk again next week. Bye.